Why are Christians so sour? Well, here's one question that comes from typically those outside the kingdom of God that I have some understanding of. I'm not saying I'm willing to agree that Christians are sour, but I do understand why they might have that reputation. One of the things that frustrates those outside the kingdom of God about those inside the kingdom of God is that we can be wet blankets, not in general necessarily, but, well, when we're planning to do something wrong. You're with a group of friends, they say, let's go do this, and one of your friends with a tender Christian conscience says, oh, I'm not sure we ought to do that. And we see them as a killjoy. Our sourness is not because Christians don't believe that people should have a good time. Our sourness, our reputation for sourness, grows out of the truth that we don't believe that sinning is the way to get there. Now, it's certainly true from time to time that Christians get confused about what's a sin and what's not. There are times when Christians may say, yeah, we really shouldn't, when God's perfectly fine if you do. But there are far more times when we in our sin want to pursue or do X, Y, or Z that it is wrong. It's not helpful. And it won't give us what we're looking for. You see, that's the deal with dealing with the devil. We have this idea that maybe the devil will trade us this pleasure in exchange for some hardship in the future. If only I can have this now, I'll pay whatever price it costs later. Well, that's a really foolish thing to do. But it's even more foolish when you realize that not only will you pay later, but you will never get what the devil promises. It always comes up short. It's always not enough. It's always hollow and empty. The Christian shouldn't be sour. One of the most frequent commands given to Christians is that we be joyful, that we rejoice, that we give thanks, that we praise. I mean, the irony is, of course, that I hear the opposite complaint as well from unbelievers. Why are Christians so cheerful? It's so saccharine and gross and fake and phony. Well, as with most questions that begin with why are Christians so that I seek to address, you should remember this too. I'm not saying there are no sour Christians. I am saying there's nothing about Christianity, there's nothing about the faith itself that should lend us toward being sour. But there are sour people inside the kingdom and outside the kingdom. There are overly bubbly people inside the kingdom and outside the kingdom. It's a good thing, well, something we all should do, inside or outside the kingdom, when we find ourselves making a sweeping generalization or even a specific judgment, to stop and ask ourselves not what conclusion are we reaching about this other person, but what does that conclusion that we want to reach tell us about ourselves? Maybe I think other people are sour because I'm wanting to do things that are wrong and I don't like being told no. Maybe I think people are sour because I'm sour. There's all sorts of ways that we get these kinds of things wrong. So at the end of the day, I'm going to argue that Christians are, in fact, not sour. I will also say that there is a campaign to present us that way, just so that, coming into the kingdom should be made to look unappealing to those outside the kingdom. But a guy who I disagree with a lot, well-known evangelical teacher and writer, made himself famous by preaching this simple message: the kingdom of God is a party. And when he preached that message, he was preaching the message of the King.